Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, Mags the Language Nerd. This is a video on how languages interact with each other, where I will specifically be focusing on multilingualism and language contact. The first time I ever left the US was when I went to Canada, and more specifically French Canada. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a place where the majority language wasn't English. It was very interesting for me to observe how French and English interacted with each other, specifically like many signs had both languages, and many people spoke French, but they switched to English to accommodate us dumb Americans, of course. And this is an example of the linguistic principle diglossia, and according to Gerard Van Herk in his book, What is Sociolinguistics? A diglossia is when, quote, in some multilingual societies, distinctly different varieties serve social roles similar to the way that different styles or levels of formality work in monolingual societies. Now, what does this mean? This simply means that depending on the situation in a society, a speaker of multiple languages will choose what language to use based on what the society deems appropriate. So that just basically means that, like, you wouldn't speak to your teacher the same way you speak to your friends, right? So there are people who just can use languages differently like that. Like that's incredible. Like I can only speak English. I can never do that. So in many societies, and in particular in bilingual ones, this manifests with a high variety language and a low variety language. And then in monolingual societies, it's usually just one high variety and then low varieties. So a high variety is used in formal situations, such as giving like a speech or government documents. And the low variety is used mainly with friends, family, and communities. Diglossia manifests itself in practically every society, including here where I live in the United States. And the US is an example of asymmetrical bilingualism, which is where less powerful linguistic groups, such as Spanish and Mandarin speakers, are expected to adopt the language of the powerful linguistic group, which in this case is English speakers like myself. Interestingly, diglossia can also occur with dialects of a language, and this is most observed in the Arabic-speaking world. Arabic has many dialects that in some cases are very different from each other. So there's a standard Arabic that is taught in schools, while at home children will usually learn their local variety. And in this instance, standard Arabic is the high variety and is used in more formal situations like school, government, and TV. And then the local dialects are all the low varieties, and they're used in more informal situations, such as with family and friends. And societies with diglossias tend to develop over long periods of time due to societal multilingualism, which is when different languages coexist in a community. Now, what happens when languages that don't have previous contact begin to interact with each other? In this instance of new language contact, you may get what is referred to as a pidgin language. Now, pidgins aren't full languages. They're languages stripped down to their essentials. They typically consist of very basic words and very basic, very uncomplicated structure. Pidgins have lexifier language, which is a language that supplies most of the words for the pidgin. And historically, these have most typically been colonial languages, such as English and French, as they tend to arise in colonial situations. And a common situation for the development of pidgins is trade situations, and under these conditions, pidgins can persist for a very long time. However, in many situations, pidgins may develop into creoles when the pidgin gains a population of native speakers. And fortunately, in most situations, this is usually because of slavery and people from all different areas being brought together, right? So, according, again, to Gerard Van Herk, in his book, What is Sociolinguistics, quote, "It may become the native language of the new community. When this happens, the pidgin becomes a full-fledged language known as a creole. Creoles greatly expand the number of words and grammatical rules found in the original pidgin and make them more regular." And there's an example in this book with Barbadian Creole English, and that is, give me a second, it's right here. Should be right here. Oh, no, I'm in the wrong section. Whoops. Okay, give me one more second. Okay, so it's got like the linguistic feature and then the example. So, for example, one of the sentences is, "It done set there since last year." And done in this instance is to show or emphasis on an action is completed. And it also has similar forms for past and present tense. Today before she passed away, I tell her to start crying now. So it sounds very similar to English, right? But it's not. It's being used differently. It has different rules and structure and such. And it's very, very interesting, right? And pigeons and creoles are very cool, very interesting, but many of us don't run into them in everyday life. We do run into our borrowings. Languages borrow words from each other all the time, including English, especially since English is a colonial language. It has words from many native and indigenous languages. It also has a lot of words from French, like a lot of words from French, because France used to rule over England. And so some of the borrowed words are like judge, jury, evidence, a lot of legal terms since, they ruled over England. And then they also have a lot of like fancier words for food, like mutton comes from French. I believe mansion also comes from French. I think the original word is like mansion or something. I don't know. I don't speak French. But if you want to see more influences on English, then check out the video, The History of English in 10 Minutes, which is linked in the description of this video. I used it as a reference for this video. There will also be the script for this video and other references down there. All in all, languages can interact in very interesting ways, right? From how we use them, such as diglossia, with there being sort of a social hierarchy of language, which is usually enforced by the government, right? To how they develop, such as with pigeons and creoles, and how they lend to each other words. And one little like footnote, when it comes to like pigeons and creoles, there is this concept of mixed languages, which I didn't write about in the script, so I don't have any resources on it, but it is a highly debated, very contentious thing. People debate if there's even mixed languages at all. That's probably could probably be its own video. I'll probably make a video on it. But yeah, that's all I have for this video. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Bye bye.